Hello everyone and welcome to Inside the Naval Postgraduate School from Monterey, California. I'm Alan Richmond here on the Pentagon Channel. Well, in this edition we'll have an in-depth interview with the Special Assistant to President Obama and the new Director for Africa, Ambassador Mary Yates. We'll also get started with part 2 on our series on women in Afghanistan with Maria Vetter. Maria, I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about what you did during your time on active duty.
We were working on a project looking at cultural data here at the postgraduate school. And what we realized is that it's very difficult to take a very qualitative narrative and find metrics such that it can be modeled. And so as a group, as a civilian group, we decided that the best thing I could do was to volunteer in uniform and go to Afghanistan and actually study culture from being within the area. In doing so, I joined the Army's Human Terrain Team and went over as a research manager on the Human Terrain Team. But uniquely, I was assigned to a Marine regiment. So here I was, an Army female officer assigned to a Marine regimental combat team located in Helmand Province. And so it was a really exceptional experience to go serve in that capacity as a cultural advisor to the commander.
Maria, when you developed these relationships with these women in Afghanistan, what were some of the concerns that they had that they shared with you?
Their definition of security was one of the most interesting insights, whereas the men would often talk about truly lethal intent, where you're talking about large weapons or explosive devices. The women's context of security was really focused on the home and on the family. Can their children go and come safely? Are they going to be exposed to people intruding in their home, stealing from them? And their sense of security came from their environment and their home state. And that really ranked as one of the highest. Second to that, because of the area that we were in, it's a very arid environment, was often the discussion of water and just the lack of water and accessibility of water because of damage to the canals or lack of pumps that were close enough in proximity. Again, they're limited to how far they can traverse outside of the house without an escort. So them being able to get to the well made a huge difference in how they were able to prepare the food and things such as hygiene. So those were common concerns that you would hear.
Well, I'm sure that after you spent some time with them and developed a stronger relationship, they were pretty much in favor of having you there since you were helping with education and with medical treatment for them and their children, right?
They were, and what one of the biggest benefits of getting to do this was to give them a voice. Because often, because they can't talk to the men, their needs are not addressed because they simply don't have a voice in the public forums, at the shuras that everyone is so accustomed and familiar at hearing. The women are typically not allowed to be there. So by speaking to them within a forum that they could have and express their needs, we were able to look at creative ways of doing education. For instance, some of them had radios, so we could bring books, broadcast a radio education program, and all of a sudden you've created literacy in the home that is familiar and accessible for them. Medically, the few village medical outreaches that we did were incredible. It was some of the first times that these ladies had opportunity to access medical care. And then training some of the midwives and training some of the local doctors really enabled a long-term opportunity for medical care for these women to address such things that we really in Western culture take for granted, like malnutrition. Something as simple as a prenatal vitamin before and after birth just makes such a difference in the decreasing the infant mortality rate simply because we allow for good nutrition. So those types of things seem like small steps, but it's those incremental portions that enable them to grow as a society and stand on their own.
I'm wondering how you communicated with these women. Do you know the language, or did you use sign language, or a combination of everything?
We got very creative because the really unfortunate part is that female translators are very few and far between. So when I had a female translator, the opportunity to get more in depth in the conversation certainly was expanded. But when we didn't have a female translator, then we would creatively enable our male translators to assist, even if that was with a curtain where the men would sit on one side and the women would sit on the other, but we would talk through the curtain, or via a radio where we would translate through the radio. And sometimes it was simple as characters. We would bring paper and we would draw, or we would point, and it's really amazing how you can overcome barriers just with laughter over stick figures. But you can begin to learn, how many children do you have? You know, where do you have to go for water? Where do you have to go for your food? And when you're able to communicate even some of those basic needs in that very austere environment, you can begin to corroborate some of the things that are being told to you by the males at the Shura, because now you have a secondary information source that allows you to really prioritize where the Reconstruction and Development funds coming from not only the military, but our USAID partners and our State Department partners, because they don't necessarily have access to this information. So when we can really start nesting that information from the ground up, we enable long-term sustainable development as opposed to just simple day-by-day development.
Well, I imagine another one of the outstanding outcomes for you personally and professionally was the opportunity to brief General Stanley McChrystal, which probably was quite an honor.
I was trusted by the Marines to take their work to Kabul as a representative of the Human Terrain Team, but to speak and present to General McChrystal, one, a comprehensive report about female engagement teams, what we had learned, what our tactics, techniques, and procedures were that were effective, and to be honest about those that weren't. What is the true value of the information that we were garnering such that it assists the commander's mission? We wanted to go beyond it just being something that felt good or seemed like the right thing to do. It was imperative that if we were going to use military personnel, female and male, in this mission, that we were focused on the mission. And so I was able to go to Kabul in my very last month after having spent the time with the Marines on the ground and present to Com ISAF and his staff on what we had done, on the value of that, and then complete the report. At the end of that brief, he challenged me to write a tactical directive in Frago that was ultimately signed about 2 weeks after my departure and has been updated. General Petraeus has continued to work with the Female Engagement Team initiatives, and there are many women who enabled me to take that to him, enabled me to talk about how productive it can be, and it's because of their efforts on the ground, and they continue to carry that torch. And it's very remarkable to see how not only our military female engagement teams, but also the non-governmental organizations and the State Department organizations have aligned and come together to really be able to expand the effort. So it's been an amazing experience to be part of the very initial group, and there's been a full female platoon of Marines that have gone into Helmand since I departed, and a second is getting ready to deploy. So the merit of this has really begun to show forth, and I think the commanders are recognizing its value most importantly.
Well, Maria, thank you very much for your service to our country and for your service here at the Naval Postgraduate School and for enlightening us a little bit on the women in Afghanistan here on the Pentagon Channel. Take care.
Thank you.
Well, special thanks to Maria Vetter and all the women who serve us so well in Afghanistan. Stay tuned for more right here on the Pentagon Channel on Inside NPS right after this. Well, recently we had the pleasure of attending the Global Center Consortium Conference here in Monterey, California, and had the pleasure of talking with its executive director and operations manager, as well as one of the participants. Well, Jim, first of all, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to appear here on Inside NPS on the Pentagon Channel. We want to find out a little bit about this Global Consortium Conference that's being held in Monterey. Tell us about it.
We're having the annual meeting of the Global Center Consortium, which is a consortium of schoolhouses with one thing in common. All these schoolhouses deal with the education, training of international students. It's an effort to build partnership capacity, to engage, and to build networks of cooperation to facilitate U.S. foreign and defense policy and really just international security generally.
Well, Jim, I know one of the things that will be happening at the conference is the NATO school will be signing a memorandum of understanding, right?
Well, that's really an important step forward. You know, the NATO school is not necessarily a U.S. government agency. It's part of of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. So it's a schoolhouse actually maintained and run by NATO. However, the commandant is traditionally a U.S. military officer. And since they are engaged in sort of that engagement process, that outreach to international students, we thought it was important to include them as a member of the consortium. And luckily, we got permission from DOD to do that, and we're going to have that signing at this meeting.
Warren, tell us a little bit about the impetus that was behind forming this organization and consortium in the first place.
Well, this all began as a result of the last Quadrennial Defense Review, which determined that we're doing a whole lot of good efforts in the world of security cooperation, but they're all very disjointed. Nobody's talking to anybody else. Nobody at the Defense Department or the Defense Security Cooperation Agency that had responsibility for it, nobody could tell you everything that was happening. Nobody had a good grasp on what was happening in the world of security cooperation. So based on that finding from the QDR, Undersecretary of Defense for Policy Ryan Henry asked that we form an organization that would bring all of that together. And so he created the Global Center and did it here at NPS because we already had a lot of the resources that would fall into the Global Center in the end.
Jim, now these schoolhouses are located all around the world, correct?
Well, the schoolhouses really are located around the world, everywhere. They're in Europe, in Hawaii, across the United States, and they vary. They really do vary. We have schoolhouses that teach English language. We have schoolhouses that teach foreign language. We have schoolhouses that teach small boat handling.
Now, the conference this year is held in Monterey. Is it held here every year, and if so, why?
Yes, the conference is held about every 15 months, and we do it here in Monterey every time because, first of all, it's easier for us as the hosts to do it here, and also because we have several of our members are here in Monterey, including the Defense Language Institute, the Naval Postgraduate School, and within NPS, the Center for Civil Military Relations, the Defense Resources Management Institute, the Center for Stabilization and Reconstruction Studies, and some of the major international partner education programs are run out of those centers, including the Defense Institution Building and the Defense Institutional Reform Initiative are right here in Monterey. So it's just very convenient for those members to be here.
Can you provide us with an overview of what takes place at the conference?
Well, every year we get together to talk about changes in the procedures for educating international students. We talk about new developments across DoD, how our curriculums might want to change and move in unison to better serve national objectives and the strategic objectives laid out by the Department of Defense.
Warren, what's the end result of all this collaborative effort, and where do we end up with the result?
Well, each school has a chance to explain, here's what I'm working on right now. These are the major projects I'm doing, or this is the major geographic region that I'm focusing in right now, whatever the case may be for each school, and to say, this is what I could use some help with, whether it be a subject matter expert, whether it be a language specialist, whether it be someone who already has a curriculum in place for that particular course or seminar, to just say, here, take my information, I'll send over my subject matter expert to help you. We can collaborate and put together a conference together or a seminar we can co-sponsor if you'd like, things like that, where it just allows a more efficient sharing of resources that already exist out there rather than going back and having to reinvent the wheel every time someone's asked to present a course. We have the experts, we have the course curricula, we have course materials already created that the various centers share amongst each other. So it just allows for a more efficient use of resources that already exist.
How would you say that it supports the warfighter?
Well, the bottom line is that what we're doing is international partner education. We're building up our partners. We're helping them develop the capabilities to fight terrorism in their home countries or as part of a coalition force. We're helping them develop border security, maritime security, professionalized militaries. By building up all of that in our partners, it helps us pass some of the burden to our partner nations. They can help us more as we continue our multinational coalition type efforts instead of trying to carry the ball ourselves.
Well, Warren, thank you very much for your time, and Jim, thank you very much for yours, and we wish you a successful Global Consortium Conference. Well, one of the participants in this Global Consortium Conference was NAV SCIETS, and we had an opportunity to talk to their director. Leif, tell us a little bit, what is NAV SCIETS?
NAV SCIETS stands for Naval Small Craft Instruction and Technical Training School. What NAV SCIETS does is we train partner nations in the maintenance, the use, and be able to drive, launch, recover, drive, and how to fight boats.
And so exactly what is the history of the organization? How long has it been in existence, and what types of things do you do throughout the year?
NAVSCIATS was initially in the early 60s as a Coast Guard command, and then in 1999, with the closure of the Panama Canal, the command moved up to Mississippi, and then in 2002, NAVSCIATS moved into new facilities at Stennis Space Center, and we've been there since.
And how long have you been the operations officer? What's your background?
I've been there since 2005. I was active duty, and then I retired about 15 months ago, and now I'm as a GS.
Overall, how do you accomplish your mission?
Oh, we accomplish our mission. You know, the partner nations, the U.S. Embassy country teams, program students, you know, from the key units that they want to engage and develop, build a partner capacity with those particular units. Those individuals come to our school, they learn the maintenance, they learn the operations training, and they take that back and use that to help build a capacity inside their country to do their own small craft maritime operations.
How does membership in the consortium really enhance what you do?
Okay, membership in the consortium enhances us as we pass lessons learned. We have a lot of dialogue. How can we do things better? How can we work as a consortium, as a DoD? How can we better support security cooperation as a whole?
Can you give us an example of how you're working with another consortium member?
We work with WINSEC, which is our Army equivalent over at Fort Benning, Georgia, and they have an operations course over there where they teach the partner nation personnel to do land security operations. They come to Stennis, Mississippi, and we do a combined exercise where we actually launch those. Our students will insert their students to do missions there on Stennis. So it's a great collaboration between the two commands.
And what would you think the future holds for your organization long term?
I see a lot of growth. As NAVSCIATS, we provide that maintenance and that operations training that supports FMS cases as we try to build partnership capacity across the globe in conducting small craft maritime security operations in support of our partner nation and U.S. interests.
Well, coming up after the break, we'll have the in-depth interview with the Special Assistant to President Obama and the Senior Director for Africa, Ambassador Mary Yates. Stay with us. Well, frequently here at the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California, we have very important guests come to speak to students. And that was the case recently, and we had the opportunity to speak with the Special Assistant to President Obama and the new Senior Director for Africa, the very distinguished Ambassador Mary Yates. Well, Ambassador Yates, first of all, thank you very much for taking the time to be here on the Pentagon Channel show on Inside NPS. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you visit our institution. I'm wondering if we could start off and you could talk a little bit about your background.
I started life as a high school teacher, and then I joined the Foreign Service, and I said I had always enjoyed interpreting foreign cultures to young Americans, and then I found myself in the Foreign Service being able to talk about America and its values to people overseas.
Well, you certainly had a distinguished career and an impressive background. What do you like most about your work?
Oh, so much. Again, I go back to the cross-cultural relations and helping a better understanding. I'm a dedicated patriot of our country, and I think helping other countries understand those values and why we are what we are is really an honor and a privilege.
I'm wondering what advice you might have for someone who's considering public service.
I would say that there's nothing better. The President spoke very recently, because of the tragedy in Tucson, about the importance of public service, and I think those of us who have chosen that as a calling in life are pleased to hear those words, but you do it because you believe in it. You know, we have a great nation, but you have to work for that nation.
Well, you certainly have an extensive and impressive background, but I'm wondering, how do you go from being a public servant to becoming an ambassador?
I never thought I would be an ambassador. I never thought I would be a deputy commander in a military command. I just went in and worked hard and cared about what I did. And I tell the young officers who work for me in the Foreign Service, you know, just work hard. You know, rewards will come. You know, I never plotted and planned anything.
Well, Ambassador Yates, I know you're a special assistant to President Obama and deal specifically with national security issues. I'm wondering if you can just give us an update.
Well, I was asked in the job as the head of strategic planning to help coordinate the national security strategy. It, of course, is the president's overarching vision for security and prosperity for our nation. It's mandated by Congress, but this is the first one. It came out in May of 2010, and I've had the pleasure here at the Naval Postgraduate School to talk about it in several venues, and it's very nice to know that people have read it and they have an interest in the way we have framed and delineated what those priorities are.
Well, you now have a new title and a new role with Africa. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I will be the senior advisor for Africa starting next week. I'm looking forward to it. I know that there will be many, many challenges, but it's a continent that I love and will work hard.
What role do you see Africa playing on the world stage?
I think the standing up of the Africa Command, the development of the command, speaks volumes for the importance that Africa is playing in the world. I mean, there are more democracies, the economies are getting stronger, the African Union, the regional organizations are growing for their own governance, so I think it just makes them stronger partners for the United States of America, and I plan to work on that in the next year or so.
What are some of the other reasons that you would want to partner with African nations?
We can have comprehensive relations with many of the nations, and you know, I think that they can work with us on some of the transnational and global issues, from climate change to pandemics. We need the African nations as our partners to address some of these global issues.
I'm wondering if you can tell us, what is the Trans-Sahara Counterterrorism Project and who belongs to it?
TSCTP, the Trans-Sahara Counterterrorism Program and Partnership, is an outstanding program, a program of record with the U.S. military, because we saw that some of the partners in the Sahel were looking at the terrorists, the Al-Qaeda, and it has only grown in the time that I have worked with the U.S. military for the last 4 years or more. It's a very important program, and it helps build the capacity of each of those nations, their military and civilian elements. And it's a program run by the State Department with the U.S. military. So it's interagency from the U.S. side working with our partners in the Trans-Sahel region.
Well, I know when you were speaking to some of our students, you were talking about the drug problem in Africa. And of course, it's a problem all over the world, but can you address it specifically for Africa?
Well, it's something that in my time at the Africa Command, I had the privilege of working on. You know, the problem of drugs flowing, and they're not flowing to Africa to be used in Africa, even though there is always some transfer spillage. But most of the drugs are headed to Europe. But it's tragic because of how it can affect the countries, the societies. You know, I was ambassador in Ghana, and we watched in the 3 years that I was there more and more drug trafficking coming through. So the government of Ghana reached out and asked for assistance in trying to address this problem. It's just a natural partnership, and certainly the U.S. military and the interagency can play an important role in that.
I'm wondering if you can give us an overview of the maritime security and those issues in Africa.
I think it's interesting because the African nations had ground forces, militaries that were primarily Army. And I think that it's important to look at the significance of having maritime forces, because so many of the threats that are transnational come or utilize the maritime domain. So I'm really, really pleased at how much the Africa Command and the military writ large has worked to address this issue. The African Partnership Station is a wonderful example of something that is ongoing.
Well, as I understand it, illegal fishing is quite a problem in Africa as well, correct?
It's tragic what has been done, the trawlers that take the fish away. Billions of dollars of revenue for the African nations that are just, as the fish are just gutted and taken off elsewhere in the world.
Well, now that you've had a visit of a day or two here in Monterey at the Naval Postgraduate School, I'm wondering if you could share your vision about our research and our education.
Oh, I don't know what took me so long to get here. I had very positive impressions from knowing the research, knowing the professionalism, and the global scope of the Naval Postgraduate School. But sitting with the students, seeing from the business school to the Cyber Institute, I mean, there is so much going on here. And I think that my bottom line takeaway is that we need to find ways to tap the research and the young people who are so energetic in studying, from engineering to the sciences that are being taught. I mean, it's very impressive, and you have a provost who is very active and thinks globally, and that's what we all have to do in this world to try and address our security problems.
Well, I hope you take that message back to President Obama. And again, Ambassador Yates, thank you so much for taking time to appear with us here on Inside NPS on the Pentagon Channel. Congratulations on your new post, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have been here.
If you'd like to find out more about the Naval Postgraduate School, here's where to look. Follow NPS on Twitter and be the first to know about groundbreaking research, student accomplishments, faculty news, community events, and much more. Don't miss a tweet. And if Facebook is your forte, find NPS's official page and get the latest news from the campus in Monterey. Check out recent photos and videos, connect with past friends, students, and faculty, or share your own story with the NPS community. Visit our website at www.nps.edu. Follow the links and join the conversation. That's it for this edition of Inside the Naval Postgraduate School from Monterey, California. I'm Alan Richmond here on the Pentagon Channel. We'll see you again real soon.